What's the craziest thing you've seen someone get fired for? Before we get started, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and turn on the bell so you don't miss future videos. Thanks for the support. We were classed as essential workers during COVID, but they sent anyone vulnerable or cared for someone home with full pay almost as soon as lockdown was announced. Coworker had a child with a serious heart issue. No issues. Don't worry, go home immediately, stay safe. She then was posting on social media about going go parties at the height of lockdown, with coworkers and managers on there. It's the sheer stupidity of it for me. Next story. Someone brought their personal laptop into the office and physically plugged it into the network. They then started discovery scanning the network thinking this would impress the tech team with what they've learned. They were not impressed. He was ultimately dismissed very quickly. Next story. A guy on my team, who had started a couple of weeks before me, asked our manager if she was a lesbian. She was, but he still got kicked out of the company for asking. Next story. Someone at my previous job used one of those fake news templates that were doing the rounds to give the impression that the company was going bust, fake quotes from the owner, etc. It went around the company and caused a lot of pearl clutching and anxiety. Apparently, making everyone in the company think they are about to lose their jobs is gross misconduct. He got yeeted. 17 years later, the company seems to still be going strong. Next story. Not particularly crazy in the grand scheme of things, but for barefaced brass neck, this one always comes to mind. We hired a new project manager, very capable lady, and came highly recommended. Gave her a few easy projects to start with, and she started demanded remote working kit. We had some very sensitive projects on with stringent client demands, meaning we had to get kit from the client, which included a mobile phone with VPN access, hotspot, and a laptop. After 3 or 4 weeks, she had still produced no real work at all, other than defensive email replies to ask if she needed help. The client got in touch after another couple of weeks, saying nothing had been done, and their tracking on the device and VPN showed she was spending 7 hours a day in a local gym, doing nothing but watching Netflix on the laptop through their VPN. We asked her about it, and she said they had good Wi-Fi, not needed with the hotspot, and nice working conditions. So we asked her to improve. Same thing. No more work done again. So someone went down to the gym to find her on an exercise bike, with the client's laptop in front of her, watching Friends on Netflix. She hadn't done anything other than reply to emails, saying she was going to get round to stuff soon. Had to let her go, and she kicked off like mad, threatening tribunals and all sorts. Next story. Can I do something that I witnessed that I couldn't believe someone, 2 people, didn't get fired for? I was HOD at a secondary school and walked in on 2 staff members in a highly inappropriate situation in a computer science classroom at about 4 p.m. when there were still pupils on site. I believe the 2 staff members are now an item with children of their own. He was cheating on his wife who had just lost a baby. Next story. Someone very senior's niece got sacked for stealing loads of cereal and snacks and drinks when we were moving office, like crates of the stuff. All on CCTV. Next story. There was 2 receptionists at my work. One was drop-dead gorgeous, and the other was, let's say, not so. Both girls helped themselves to the wee charity box of sweets, the one where you put 20 pence in and take 3 sweeties out. Charity complained about it, so the management checked the CCTV. Not so got sacked pretty much on the spot for theft from a charity, and the other one got promoted to be the boss's owner personal assistant. Next story. I worked in a DIY shop. England were playing a friendly match. New lad told everyone he was going to deliberately injure his hand with an axe, so he'd have to be sent home. A few minutes later, he appears with an accidental hand injury from one of the axes we sold. Got sent home to watch the football. Management found out and sacked him. Not going to lie, the manager found out because I told him exactly what happened. Guy was already giving off weird vibes before this, and I don't want to work with a psycho like that. Next story. Remember as a kid, you would sit on a fence and put your legs on the pole underneath and lean back? Had a lad do that on scaffolding holding up a window frame. On a building site, 9 floors up. He couldn't understand why I sacked him because he does it all the time and never falls. Next story. There was an American guy worked in our office. When you're working, someone will end up pissing you off. You have a grumble, joke about it, move on. This guy says, I could just wring her neck, already a bit strong, but it didn't help that he was holding a small knife at the time, ostensibly to peel fruit, cut apples, etc., and made a stabbing motion with it. he was cordially invited to leave employment with the company. In another job, there was also a phantom shitter, and I think this is more common than people may believe. Said individual would mess in a small lift from the car park into the reception area of the office building we were in. No one knew who it was until one day, someone came in quite early to do overtime and pressed the button to call the lift. The doors immediately open, and there's this lady, just squatting there having an accident. Not the sort of person you'd expect either. Pretty quiet, most people would consider diligent, etc. Next story. Not the craziest, but definitely the most avoidable. Someone at a place I worked kept turning up late, got warned multiple times, promised to improve every time, and then somehow managed to arrive late to the meeting that was supposed to discuss their attendance problems. Everyone knew how that conversation was going to end. Next story. I'd spend a while browsing through the HCPTS hearings reports. Some of those can lead to head desking though. One paramedic was struck off for getting his shopping in, whilst his crewmate was dealing with a patient in public. On another occasion, he went off for a haircut, again, abandoning crewmate in public. Next story. When I was doing door-to-door sales, one of my coworkers got 6 sales in a day and was bragging to everyone. The next day we found out he got fired because he had signed up his entire family in order to get the commissions. They found out because his tracking location showed he got all 6 signups while being inside his own home. Next story. Having bus money in her apron. She was accused of taking a tip that was given to her by a customer earlier, but we weren't allowed to keep tips. 65% went to the owners that didn't work there, 20% to the manager, 10% to the chefs, and 5% shared between all the waiting on staff. The owner put her hand in the waitress's pocket for a pen and pulled out the money and sacked her on the spot. We checked CCTV immediately and ran back down to tell the owner there's no footage of her putting any tips in her apron, and the only tip handed to her was put in the tip section of the till. The owner then called the customer who tipped saying, "Did you give a tip to someone who looks like X?" And the customer said yes, and the owner turned around to the waitress and said, "Well, this is proof you took the tip and stole it from me, so get out." Next story. Having an inappropriate act performed on them in the staff lift. The chap receiving was sacked. The girl performing, the daughter of a senior manager, was moved to a different department. She did this again with another staff member. Again, the chap was sacked. She was allowed to work her notice and find a new job. Next story. They plugged in their personal laptop in an office to watch adult content. Unfortunately, they took out an internet connection cable to do so, and somehow took the company website down. 3,000 failed online purchases over the course of the weekend. Another one. They stole a tour jacket that a performing act had left behind. No idea whether they thought it was okay to take or not. The main issue was that they were getting married at the venue a few weeks later and had to come back after being sacked for their own wedding. Next story. In my last job, there was a small 8-person night shift team, which included 2 couples, Couple A and Couple B. The man from Couple A was heavily flirting with the woman from Couple B, so the woman from Couple A reported Couple B for doing drugs at work. The company did a blanket drug test on the whole team, and 7 people failed and all lost their jobs, and the night shift no longer existed. Next story. I was doing some agency chef work at corporate industrial site. Second day, I was walking down an inclined concrete walkway to the main entrance of the building. The general manager, who was nearby, yelled at me to use the handrail. I was bemused by this and just carried on and went in to sign in, etc. 20 minutes later, after starting doing some prep in the kitchen, I was told I was being escorted off the premises for this egregious transgression. My words. I kid you not. Got paid for the full day and was reallocated to another gig the next day. Next story. A guy on my apprenticeship a few years above ordered drugs off the dark web to the office. Bearing in mind this apprenticeship is highly competitive and you get a free degree and salary, he threw it away for some illegal substances. What an absolute idiot, honestly. Next story. No a sacking, but interesting to share. Once worked in a very casual dress office. Guy booked a half-day holiday and took the morning off. Came in after lunch in 3-piece suit, ties, shoes, etc. Absolutely no attempt to disguise that he had been at an interview. Next story. Just before COVID hit, I worked in a popular fast food restaurant. We had a high staff turnover, and in July we hired 5 new team members. A 16-year-old female school leaver, one of them. For a 16-year-old, she was very flirty with all the men, workmates, and customers, or any age. And it would sometimes be very dirty, and it was so uncomfortable. I hated being on counter with her while she was training because she would flirt with every man that came in, and watching a minor behave inappropriately with men much older than her was just gross. I was in my mid-30s at the time. A few customers even made complaints about her overly dirty behavior. To justify it, she would say things like, "Everyone knows sells. That's why girls are in bikinis in music videos." There were CCTV cameras all over the shop back and front. She was asked to get some boxes from the storage area to make up before the tea time rush started. One of the cooks had to get something from the storage area a few moments later. He found her in there trying to reach something on a top shelf and asked if she needed a hand. She turned round, lifted her t-shirt up and said, "Help yourself." The cook, who is gay, ran out the back door in shock. The manager and the area manager were both in the cash office and had seen it all. The cook got given the rest of the night and the next day off. The girl was sacked on the spot, to which she argued with them, saying it's only because she wouldn't sleep with them. Next story. I wasn't there for it, but it was hot gossip when I first started. A few months prior, a guy had been fired, with his offense being that he sent someone an email that said, "I like your hair today."
How could someone be fired for that?
Well, the recipient of the email wore a hijab, and she took it as him mocking her and made a complaint. When this first came to light, he claimed that he sent it to the wrong person and meant to send it to his friend with a similar name. Regardless, he was shown the door. You might be thinking that this is harsh, especially as they couldn't prove who he meant to send it to. However, by all accounts, the lad was an absolute nightmare for the office. Turned up late if he ever turned up at all, had emails sit in his inbox for weeks, rude and abrasive to managers, etc. So, higher-ups found the perfect excuse to sack him, discrimination being a hard thing to fight against. The office, while I was there, were split on whether they thought it was justified or not, which shows what the average worker there was like. My favorite story from it was while they could never prove it was him, the toilets were often found purposefully blocked with toilet paper. This mysteriously stopped when he was fired. Next story. A bloke at work was new, gave everyone nicknames from Ninja Turtles because he was still learning our names, referred to another worker as Splinter in front of a manager, and was out the door by the end of the day. The bloke he called Splinter actually liked the nickname and fought for the bloke's job. The irony. Next story. The most well-respected bloke, quite high up in the company, with a middle-class family, was fired for stealing a hard dive. He had hidden it under his hat and caught by security. Next story. Making and sharing a colleague's birthday card, where they photoshopped the guy's bald head onto a very inappropriate photo. The birthday boy, Baldy, found it funny, but HR did not. Not only did the instigator get fired, but the entire company had to do compliance training involving a slightly less NSFW version of this exact scenario. Next story. A couple were using the internal email system to sell drugs with code names used for the goods. That one made the national newspapers. A way back, we're talking 35 years ago, a guy diverted customers' checks to his mate's address, using his knowledge of the IT systems to amend the payee details. That one also made the papers, and he went to prison. Next story. Drove into a bridge and ripped the wing off a brand new van. Said he hit a pole in a hedge, as wasn't paying attention. Also said he swerved to miss a car coming down the lane. Handed over the dash cam footage. He drove straight into the bridge, no car, and you can hear the clicking of his lighter as he tried to light a fag, in a company vehicle, which has been illegal for some time now. By toothless, he had a lot of teeth missing. Next story. At a work party, my old company had hired the mezzanine of a restaurant. The ground floor was still open to the public. Some from head office opened his flies and urinated onto the public eating their dinner below. Quickest I've seen someone fired. Next story. He put a sandwich bag in his pocket and got done for company theft. As in the lil plastic portioning bags. He was taking one to use for picking up dog mess for when he walked his dog after work. They were looking for any reason to fire him, and this was how they got him. Company theft of a tiny plastic bag. He had it coming, and I do feel somewhat bad. But I did feel this was pretty wrong. Next story. Guy started at our company a week before the annual company party. He got incredibly drunk on table wine early doors and asked someone from HR if they could get him some illegal substances, then went out onto the streets to score some instead, came back very wired, and then got on stage and slapped the compere across the face during his comedy set for poking fun at him. He was let go the next morning. Next story. About 10 years ago, someone diverted a load of company payments to their own account. used it to buy a brand new Porsche 911, and rocked up to work one day like it was nothing. They were on an entry-level, minimum wage job. Still gets whispered as legend around the office. Next story. I was a manager of a social care service, supporting people with mental health issues and learning disabilities living in their own home. Got a phone call one day from a staff member to tell me she'd been arrested for shoplifting while supporting a vulnerable person with their weekly shop. She stole a makeup product, lost their job, and lost their license to work in care ever again over something stupid like a lipstick. A middle-aged woman with a family, she drove a decent car, lived in the local area. I had to do the investigation and disciplinary process to terminate her contract. It was a horrible process, and the person who was being supported told everyone she met about it, so no chance of keeping that confidential. Next story. Doing cocaine and watching adult content on a night shift. He was the only person on duty, but didn't realize there were CCTV cameras. Not much happens on a night shift in the role. It's basically sit around until something breaks, so it's easy to become bored. Next story. Kids entertainment industry. Told a 7-year-old to stop being so horrible in earshot of lots of other children and parents. His defense during his disciplinary meeting was, but he was being awful though. Not the same company, but another guy pulled into a disabled bay at a children's hospital, urinated on the building in full view of the whole parking lot and entrance, then threatened a security guard when confronted. Next story. 2 people were sacked for an inappropriate encounter in the goods lift at my old job in a well-known chemist. The guy's girlfriend only just had a baby the previous month. Maybe not that crazy, but it was pretty wild to hear about it at the time. Next story. Christmas party, maybe 5 years ago. Well-respected, fairly senior guy in his late 40s, got absolutely battered. Passed out in a chair, woke up, stumbled about, dropped trouser and bare-arse drunk in the middle of the party, was sacked the next day, had a family, kids, house, etc. Was honestly really sad as he had no memory of it, but the company had no choice. Next story. I got sacked from a minimum wage KP job for having a blood clot in my lung. Went to hospital, got a phone call telling me that if I don't turn up for my shift, then I'm sacked. Got sacked, had my money withheld for weeks. Then they told everyone I was sacked for stealing from the till. Eventually got my apology, but they never publicly apologized. Next story. This was about 25 years ago, but a former colleague was caught in a very inappropriate act at his desk one late afternoon, and the cleaner caught him in the act. Rather than try to hide his embarrassment, he got up with it still in his hand and carried on. The worst thing is that yes, he got fired, but won a tribunal case because the correct HR process wasn't followed. And yes, it was in the public sector. Next story. He went on the run because he was being hunted by the police for being a offender against children, having gay sex in the toilets. I specifically mentioned that it was gay sex because when a heterosexual couple got caught, they weren't fired. The boss at the time of these incidents was gay. One guy pulled a moonie in the office kitchen, and someone took a photo and put it on Facebook. A manager saw it. Next story. A staff Christmas dinner one year had our new salesman getting very drunk and insulting, making incredibly inappropriate comments to the waitress. What actually got him sacked, though, was telling the MD everything that the sales chap could see was wrong with the business, and the MD himself. Got into work the Monday morning to be told the chap would not be working his notice. Next story. Had a guy call in sick because he claimed to have D and V. His mate tagged him later that day, around lunchtime, on Facebook down at the beach, celebrating the friend's birthday. He was fired on the spot when he came in the following morning. Next story. Guy got in an argument with a senior saleswoman, sent her an email with a cow picture, got suspended immediately, broke all the rules about contacting other employees, got sacked, took the company to court, and basically got laughed out. Next story. University lecturer here. Someone got sacked for stealing his colleague's teaching material and delivering their sessions, leaving his friend in the lurch when this person had to do their teaching. What makes this so unbelievably stupid is that you teach the same stuff year on year, so you recycle a lot of material once it's written, with obvious yearly checks and updates, but this isn't a big job. In academia, it's notoriously difficult to fire someone, but this guy was out within an hour of his boss finding out. People in academia don't get fired for this, but they should. Every department has those 1 to 2 people who each year somehow manage to go on sick leave when they should be marking, leaving colleagues to pick up the slack. Context. This is the most exhausting, mind-numbing, and time-consuming part of the job, but also the most important one, so not getting it done, or getting it done too late, is simply not an option. One-offs happen, but it's the regulars you know are just cheating themselves out of a big task. Bonus point for a colleague of mine who went on sick leave, and then tweeted about doing a guest talk in another university. Luckily, she quit before she was fired shortly after. Next story. Not sacked, but ridiculous story. Coworker had spent several months harassing me and another coworker, asking why we weren't working, claiming we're making too much noise, etc. Manager calls me over one Friday afternoon. F has put in a formal complaint about your behavior. She was claiming I had spent all day on my phone, not doing any work, and distracting her, which was news to both me and my manager, given I had spent the day sitting with him halfway down the office training someone. She stopped after that, and HR said they never received any complaints. I assume the manager she tried to report me to said, "What the heck, lady?" Added bonus. The next day, I was in doing overtime. We were in the middle of a heat wave, and, well, UK buildings, so they said if you feel faint or need to go home or anything, immediately report it to the manager in charge of your section. Guess who that was? Every 20 minutes or so, this woman is at my desk. "Are you okay? Can I get you anything? Are the fans enough?" Don't hesitate to come to me. It hit me around the third time. She was terrified. If I fainted or something, it would be far too easy for me to say, "Well, how was I meant to think?" I'd be listened to. Next story. I caught somebody using their work laptop to watch adult content. It was a big international business, you've heard of the brand, with head office in the UK and secondary sites in other countries. I was doing IT stuff and found that somebody's laptop in a European country was infested with malware after browsing adult content sites on their work laptop. They were sacked the same day. Anyway, they were in a country with very different attitudes to employee rights, unions, and so on, and the person took it to the local equivalent of a tribunal and actually got reinstated, effectively because we tolerated everyone else using our IT for a little personal stuff during breaks, and adult content is personal use too, and we couldn't show that anyone else in the workplace was harmed. There was some frantic rewriting of policies after that incident. Next story. I worked in a hospital, and one of the blood takers had to be made redundant because she was a health problem with BO that was so bad, you could tell which lift she had used 20 minutes later. It was making the patients feel sick. It was a shame. She was a lovely lady, but couldn't do anything about it. I've always wondered how the management dealt with it. Next story. Was at a work site in my late teens. New guy comes into the site manager's office to get up to speed on what needs done. The new guy sneezes, and didn't just let out an almighty achoo. There was a very unfortunate and obvious accident. "Sorry, mate, we're going to have to let you go." Next story. Workmate disappeared one day, just before Christmas. Then, the local newspaper did their yearly issue of Banged Up Over Christmas. He was front and center, given 15 years for a serious crime against a minor. Next story. Someone Googled how to carry out a violent attack on their employer. We worked for an ISP. Security swooped him out of his chair within 5 minutes, and the police arrived shortly after. Next story. During my railway apprenticeship, we had to stay in a training center for 5 months. During that time, I encountered an apprentice who was basically having to redo a course he'd failed the first time. The apprenticeship really didn't like throwing people out, but it was clear from the get-go that this guy didn't have much going on upstairs. Like when asked how long is a meter, he basically showed with his arms roughly 20 centimeters. Plus, when talking to him, he'd brag about when being in depot that he didn't have to go and do any work with the others, and they'd just let him stay in depot watching Netflix, which me and several other people in my class tried to tell him that wasn't a good thing. In the course of redoing the class, there were a ton of other things that were massive red flags, such as him blowing something up by wiring it wrong, as well as electrocuting himself with a minor current on several occasions. So we were all worried about how he'd actually do out on track. Lo and behold, 3 months later, we hear news that he's been booted from the apprenticeship, which, as I said, is a near impossible task. Turns out upon being let out on track after the work had finished, he saw he was going to be late for his own train, and rather than follow the correct procedures of getting off track at their correct location, he'd just decided to cross 4 or so open lines and jump up onto the station platform. This violated so many rules and regulations, it would make your head spin. rightfully leading to his instant dismissal and him not being able to work on any railway for 15 years. Past that, with the apprenticeship, there were a few more ones that fall under that umbrella of crazy, but not to the risking your life to catch a train and disrupt the entire network level. 2 guys got caught using substances in their vans on the way up to a training center. Both gave themselves away when they checked into reception stinking of it. One guy in particular, we all didn't know how he lasted that long, as his room and the corridor out in the 5-month stay at the center stank of weed. And 3 guys got thrown out after they were found to be stealing food during COVID. Basically, during COVID, all trainees were sent to hotels for their training stays, and your food was ordered by your phone in your room, and they'd call you to come collect it when ready. These 3 guys decided they couldn't be bothered to do that, and just went through all the bags of food down there, grabbing whatever they wanted, which was seemingly going well until someone else came down for their food and found one of them holding it hostage. Which, even though they were able to get the food back, the 3 retaliated by wiping yogurt on the poor guy's door handle and leaving all their food rubbish outside blocking his door. Though the person they targeted got the final laugh on them as he reported them, which led to them being thrown out after it was found that they'd left beer bottles outside of the person's room, and upon being asked to do a drugs and alcohol test, all 3 refused on the grounds that they had COVID, which, as you might imagine, was the dumbest thing you could do, as not only had they refused the test, but also violated every rule by coming to training with COVID. So it was an easy boot of the apprenticeship for them when it appeared they only had a few months left before passing. Next story. In my first job, someone got fired for stealing a chocolate Santa. In my previous job, we had a temp who went for lunch one day, left his coat, and didn't come back for the rest of the day. 2 days later, he comes in 2 hours late and sits at his desk as if nothing had happened. Our manager sees him, hands him his coat, and marches him straight out of the office. Same job, but one of the managers for the reception team got fired for groping a male employee amongst other things. She was really mess at her job, referred to all the female employees as Bridget instead of learning their names. And when they were busy, she would leave early to pick up her wine order, but it was definitely the groping that got her fired. Next story. I used to work for the police years ago. Several cases of police officers getting sacked for drugs or drink driving, etc. I remember a PCSO who was specifically assigned to schools getting caught in an inappropriate relationship with teenage girls. I also remember a different PCSO getting in trouble for setting off CS gas inside the office. Shockingly, they didn't get sacked though. Next story. My first week of work, I asked a few people where they were from, mostly out of curiosity and because it was the first time in the UK for me. Some of them looked at me as if I had asked about their underwear. I had just come from a place with a lot of international students and workers, where that was the first question we asked each other. Next story. A guy in the call center I worked for got involved with a customer's argument with his wife. We worked for an internet provider, and my colleague wrote in the customer's account notes that the guy was a domestic abuser. Next story. Our company had an outing at a local brewery last September. My boss gave one of the cabinet makers a lift home. His wallet fell out and opened when he got out, and a bag of illegal substances fell out of it. Next story. Sleeping on the job. Having a secret second job with the same contracted hours, they worked from home and definitely made the most of their time, processing false refunds to steal money. Next story. A former colleague where we supported some kit in NHS sites, mainly servers in racks in cupboards, was fired after being caught wandering around a woman-only ward of a hospital. Next story. Both at the same company. One guy used to work late. One morning, someone stood over him at his desk whilst he packed his things up and marched him out of the office. This was after computers came with disk drives, and there was one computer in the building that had one. He would work late and download adult content, then burn it to DVDs on this one computer. The process failed in some way, and the person whose computer it was came in that morning and found evidence someone was trying to burn adultcontent.com or something sordid onto a disk. Quick check of logs and CCTV, and they figured out who it was. Another one was downloading MP3s from an illegal site, which infected the network. The company had to take their entire national network offline and disconnected from each other, and one by one, painstakingly remove all traces of the virus. Took about 2 weeks to do, and we all had no computers in that time. We never found out who it was. Next story. This was told to me by my brother. He was having a team meeting in a bakery in a big supermarket. He was the only white guy apart from one other. Everyone else was of some ethnicity I don't want to specify. This was the day after the 7/7 bombings, and apparently the staff were talking about this event positively. The prophet said, etc., etc. So my brother just keeps quiet. He's only about 21 at the time. Anyway, the huddle breaks apart, and the other white guy takes a few steps away, turns around, grabs his junk, and says, "I've got something extremely offensive. He didn't make it to lunch break." Dismissed instantly. Next story. A fellow former coworker uploaded some data and files they weren't allowed to. They wanted to take them home to learn how to do something. Security is very strict in my industry. This is stuff that's never supposed to leave the building unauthorized. Maybe it wouldn't have gotten flagged right away, but then they were having issues with their machine, so had to get tech in to fix it while having their personal email open on their desktop in the process of uploading those files. Automatic termination and walked out of the building by security. Next story. Stealing a pen. Can't remember the exact detail. It was some special one for work. Theft was rampant in the company. Not talking pennies, power tools, stainless steel, etc. So management decided to make an example of someone. The first guy they caught had decades of service, and up to then, never taken anything. Dismissed, rather publicly, on the spot for gross misconduct. The poor sod obviously lost his job for a paltry item, but the message was understood, and theft went down to normal levels. Next story. Repeating what the director had said to him, but months later from a slightly different context. The director did not like that one bit. Told him to get out. After a few hours, called him back and said the employee was being reprimanded for 2 weeks. No pay, 0 hours contract. So laid off, not really fired. It's funny because the director wouldn't even lay off another member of staff who would not show up, or show up clearly intoxicated and stink. Next story. Never seen it, but a guy I used to work with, his son was a security guard at Tesco and slept in being late, and decided to open a tub of hair product on the shop floor to sort his hair out on the shop floor, and then put the tub back on the shelf. Next story. My mate got fired for passing offensive racist notes around work between him and his mate. They left the notes at work for the night shift to find, but forgot it had both their identity on the back. Not the brightest. Next story. I work in nightlife, so as you can imagine, I've seen some pretty crazy stuff over the years. Some resulting in sackings, other things actually instigated by the bosses. However, the funniest things that spring to mind happened in my prior career, in engineering. I worked at a firm that made radar hardware for the defense industry. Small company, not well known, had a particular niche. They had an apprentice straight out of school who lasted a whole 3 weeks. Our hardware systems utilized a proprietary PCB board with a number of advanced chips on them. Extremely complex, extremely expensive, 5,000 pounds plus per board, and this was 20 years ago. Shortly after he started, a number of returned boards marked for repair went missing. Turned out this apprentice had been stealing them. Was it to sell on for himself? Was it to sell trade secrets to competitors? No, it was so that he could get some practice in with his new soldering iron. We literally had piles of basic components he could have practiced on, that he could have taken if asked. By the time we realized what was going on, he'd taken and ruined at least 50,000's worth of boards. Later on in my time there, one of the upper management actually did try to steal sensitive IP and sell it to a competitor. He got found out and lost everything. Next story. A mate of mine dropped a drug at work. He was working by himself on a weekday in a fancy tea shop. Not cafe, but selling teas and pots and things. His shifts were usually not busy at all, like maybe 1 or 2 customers per day max. Anyhow, he got an email saying, "You are fired." He was surprised, because the day was relatively uneventful, all things considered. He closed up, etc. So he sent an email back asking why. They didn't even bother to write a reply, just sent back a CCTV clip of him pouring literal drops of milk, one at the time, into the samples cups, while on his knees and spending good 30s between drops observing the ripple. One's teas are all milked enough. He proceeded to tap the surface area of the tea with a spoon, and observing the ripples, occasionally throwing his head back in amusement. He eventually started to speed up the spoon tapping as he was playing some kind of music instrument. This was in front of a couple of customers who walked in on this art show and were very confused and stopped to watch the ripples themselves. They did not kneel or interrupt them and walked away in less than 2 minutes. Upon seeing the video, he recalled that he indeed really enjoyed the tea ripples. Next story. It happened at a friend's organization, and it wasn't the reason for the sacking, but instead how long it took. Someone was caught downloading and watching child-adult content on their work computer while in the office. The police were called, equipment was taken as evidence, and the person arrested. According to policy, they couldn't be sacked, but were suspended on full pay. They were charged, but still couldn't be sacked, and the suspension remained in place. Months later, after being off work on full pay all the time, it went to court, and they were found guilty. Still couldn't be sacked and stayed on suspension. They were sentenced to time in prison, but even that wasn't enough to sack them. Instead, what they had to do was once they had actually gone to prison, they wrote to them and told them the suspension had been lifted and they could return to work. They couldn't because they were in prison, and after a month, they were allowed to terminate their contract due to non-attendance.
Next story. I got sacked once when I was at college, and some of my mates were cleaners in the evening, but most of our mates left except me and one other. Anyway, new people started, and some older couples started working with us. We got on all right, but me and my mate being 17 were a bit immature for them. One day we thought it would be funny to write Ken with an arrow in big letters with mop water about the size of a car in the main entrance and an arrow to where he works. He found it funny at the time. I came in the next day and it was still there. We learned about bleach that day. Next story? I would say this story happened before I arrived at where I work, but it's so stupid that it is brought up at work every so often, and it's stupid enough that you'll enjoy it. I work in a pharmaceutical development lab. An apprentice was taking samples home and snorting them to see if they'd make him high. Perhaps unsurprisingly, he ended up quite unwell after taking one of them. Next story. Wasn't fired, but I fired. Whilst managing a busy department, an assistant phoned in sick, claiming she was so poorly she couldn't even get out of bed. Later on, she was posting on Facebook social media her partying at Ascot Horse Racing Festival. She probably knew that I didn't have FB, but her colleagues who did were sufficiently annoyed to bring it to my attention. Next story. Not me, but my mom worked at Asda, and one of her colleagues was fired because her husband had come into the store with a finger that was bleeding. So she took a plaster from a nearby first aid box and gave it to him. Apparently by doing that, it was theft from the store, which is obviously a sackable offense. Next story. I worked in an inbound call center, and a bloke got caught mimicking the accents of customers. One complaint later, and we had management listening to every call he took for a week to put his disciplinary file in order. Next story. She got so drunk at work's party, the CEO took her back to hotel in Black London cab. She peed on him during the journey. Not sure about fired, but we never saw her again. Next story. We got a new sales guy, a real hotshot from a decent-sized company who felt like quite a coup. He was also completely insufferable. A couple of weeks after joining, we went away for a company meetup. On the plane over, he's deliberately waking people up, yelling at the bus driver when he missed a turning, delaying us by a whole 2 minutes, and boasting to the junior sales reps that he outranks them, that they should shut up because he earns more. Not that it would excuse it if he had, but he hadn't closed a single deal yet. We get to the hotel bar, he orders some drinks, scrunches up the receipt, throws it at our polite, quiet, introverted CEO, and sneers. Just expense that. It was all on the company card anyway. He also tells one of the other senior sales reps, "My family were in the army, proper soldiers. You were just an officer. You're not proper army." This thrilled the sales rep, who was relieved to hear his 2 tours of Afghanistan, one of Iraq, and witnessing the death of his friends didn't actually happen. This was all on the first night. The next morning he apologized, but by the evening, he was getting up to his tricks again. He was basically avoided for the rest of the trip after that. On Monday, we were told by the director of sales, "We take our company culture seriously. Nobody is above it." On that note, when we got to the airport on Friday, I asked Person to leave his laptop and pass with me. He won't be coming back. Next story. I didn't see it, but it was heavily reported on, and he confirmed it to me with a shrug when I bumped into him. A former colleague of mine trained to be a department manager, but was moved to a much bigger store nearby upon promotion. It was known to us, our manager and his new manager, that he was a marijuana user, but nobody cared. As long as he wasn't smoking or possessing it at work, he was left alone. Until it came out that he was actually dealing pot, that is, prior to his move to his new store. Work had been tipped off, allegedly by his dealing partner and housemate after a falling out. He denied that he was dealing it, and claimed he grew marijuana for personal use. He escaped with a warning about it, under the proviso, "If you are dealing, stop.
as he was well thought of by management and they didn't want to see his career to be destroyed by it. Cut forward a few months, he's moved to his new store and starts dealing at his work to some of his colleagues after finding out they use substances. From internal discussion and his subsequent confirmation, he had moved out of his house and into his grand's house, found a new dealing partner who was growing it, and he was hiding drugs in other places for sale. One of those places was above a ceiling tile above a toilet cubicle in the staff toilets at his store. He was caught with his hand in the cookie jar by the store manager and was fired on the spot. Absolute idiot. Next story. A friend and I used to carpool daily to work, and someone else asked for help, so we got her too. A few days in, we smelt alcohol on her breath and ignored it. A few weeks in, she was staggering to the car. So we took her to work, ignoring the situation, but reported it to management. They monitored and then found she'd hidden alcohol in work too, cistern of the toilets. So instant dismissal. We also had someone start screaming and swearing down the phone about how they'd served for the country in the RAF and knew more than an IT sysadmin. Cue management running to him, disconnecting the call, and shifting him immediately. My other one was a girl used to come into work, was highly capable by all accounts, but would spend her day scrolling from Facebook, her ex's new person, to shopping pages, back to Facebook stalking, back to shopping. I had the joys of gathering evidence to get her gone, was a waste of space, and would constantly do a faux Pikachu shocked face when told she couldn't do anything. Honestly, I hated her soon after she'd started anyway. She just proved as to why. Next story. Though I live in the UK, the story is from India. My colleague had traveled on business visa to the USA for 3 months. She had stayed at a relative's and had probably got the hotel stay receipts from someone she knew. When she gave the bill, $100 per night back in 2006, max limit allowed. The real rates of the hotel she picked were $75 anyway. My manager further asked for the card, ATM transaction for the said amount. Rather than bothering about it, she faked the boss's signature and submitted the bills to finance. Later, the fin department verified with the manager and found out. We knew nothing about it. Someone from HR had come down for general meeting, after which she was asked to stay back. After 30 minutes, she called me and asked if I could bring her bag and lunchbox out. I did, and asked if her access is not working. She said, yeah, some issue. Next morning, we were told that she has resigned. Tried reaching out, but she did not pick. Got to know the real story 6 months later when I visited the other office. Next story. I did hear of a guy who was fired from a company I used to work for because he was stealing women's shoes. Some of the women would have a pair of heels under their desk and swap into trainers for the commute. A few women noted their shoes were disappearing. The company tracked it back to this guy, who was swiping them after everyone had gone for the night. More recent had a someone who tried to email 188 confidential documents to their home email address, including contracts, client lists, partner lists, CVs of people we'd interviewed but not offered a role to who he thought would be good, price lists, etc. He did it 2 weeks before he handed in his notice, thinking the company would only be checking his emails going forward. Either that or trying to access adult content on the work computer during work hours. Next story, I'll comment for myself. I worked in an office that was the size of a closest. We made phone calls for the dealership, or if you called the dealership, you would speak to the BDC department. Now you couldn't see in because we had that one-way privacy mirror tint on our door. I was working away and the manager walks in and fired me right then and there because I was sitting on my feet. I don't know how to explain it, but it's the most comfortable position for me to sit in. I've always been that way and still am. Anyway, the owner called me and said I had better be back to work Monday morning. I was their top BDC person, and me and this manager just didn't like each other. Every time the owner left, he tried to mess with me. It ended in a huge meeting with him getting in trouble. Next story. Okay, this story goes back to about 1997. Department manager, male, mid-50s, at large insurance company, comes into work about 7 a.m. Before anyone else is in the office, he goes onto a adult content website. Back then the internet was slow, so there were a lot of sites hosting photos rather than videos, and prints a lot of filth off on the color laser printer. Unfortunately, the printer jams, and he can't fix it, despite taking it apart as far as he knows how. Someone from IT comes in at 9 and fixes the printer. Immediately, loads of adult content comes flooding out. While department manager is trying to stop the IT guy from looking, saying that the printing is a highly confidential business plan. He was escorted out of the building later that morning. Next story. What's the craziest thing you've seen someone get fired for? Having a heart attack at work. Boss personally handed him a work laptop while recovering in hospital and told him to get on with it. Then, about a month after his return to work, the boss rolled up to his desk and summarily fired him for not being the same person he has before his heart attack. Fill this cardboard box with your stuff. Escorted to the front door. The boss actually walked around our open plan office, telling anyone that would listen the above. Then he said, "But you're all okay because you're healthy." Doctor had obviously told him to take it easy, and that meant only 40-hour weeks, and not the 80 his boss was driving him at. Next story, bringing a cat into the office. I had just started at this marketing firm, and we were all crammed together in cubicles. One lady got a new cat and brought her to work, but another lady was allergic, so the boss said, "Never again, please." A few days later, the allergy lady came in and started sneezing. Then you hear, "Meow," and cat lady had actually made this cat a bed inside her desk drawer. Lost her job for it. It was actually a huge drama and fight, and I had only just started there, having never worked in an office before. It was the most surreal thing, just seeing this cat in a cat bed inside a desk, and two people screaming at each other over it. Was years ago, but something I'll never forget. Next story. A contractor got drunk, stole a bus, and crashed it in the company's car park. Yeah, he was fired. This must be a good 20 years ago, in a large campus-type software development site for a big bank. The site was the middle of nowhere, and even had its own bar. On this occasion, there was some sort of do, with a bus provided to transport people from the site to the nearest town. So, this rather drunk contractor thought that driving a bus must be as easy as driving a car, and decided to take the bus on a joyride around the car park. Turned out it was not as easy as he thought, and he crashed. IIRC didn't damage anything else. Next story. My old mate, Mad Derek, spiked his 65-year-old boss with LSD, who was in charge of running an aluminium hot rolling mill in the now shut-down Alcan in Rogerstone, Wales. The 65-year-old was completely off his nut, found dancing like Mick Jagger around the foundry, singing, "I Can't Get No Satisfaction." Mad Derek, who spiked him in revenge for a bad timekeeping written warning, was later sacked for gross misconduct. His boss was taken by paramedics to the Royal Gwent Hospital and monitored for 24 hours whilst he recovered from its effects. Next story. Mid-90s, just entering the workplace, I had a boss who was hated. He had an obvious drug problem, and when women went into his office, he would put his hands in his pockets and lean back, so you could see he was behaving inappropriately. Back then, it was very difficult to get someone sacked for that. He was eventually let go when he was caught being intimate with the office cleaner in his office after hours. It was only as I'd been there longer, I realized it was a closed CCTV system that someone would have to have actually watched on VHS. Next story. Working as a chef in a chain restaurant 20 years ago, our GM took us all out for drinks after work at a local cocktail bar. Totally unprecedented. Later in the night, she dropped her handbag and thousands of pounds fell all over the floor. She had cleaned out the safe and had flights to Spain booked the next morning. The bar manager took charge of the cash and returned it to the safe the next day. She got sacked hard, but they just let her go. Didn't prosecute her anything. Wild that she got away so lightly. Next story. My mom told me about someone she worked with who nearly got the sack. She worked for a council, and a guy she worked with has a bit of a side business and would answer emails about this in work time. Management found out about this and weren't happy and suspended him for investigation. As he was being walked out of the building, he collapsed and had some kind of panic attack. When he came back, they basically dropped the investigation and just gave him a written warning. Next story. At my old job, a girl recorded herself and left a VM really slagging these two boys off that she had just attended a job for and sent them it. We worked from a work mobile and our own phone, so I think she must have been on her own phone while accidentally pocket dialing one of those boys. The last job she had been at. Someone else did cocaine. This new job, they found someone's OnlyFans. I think that was it, but I didn't know you could be fired for that. Next story. Was a supervisor at a massive warehouse, had staff coming up to me to tell me a chap was using his lighter to remove plastic banding around boxes. So I asked him, he didn't deny it, so asked if he had a knife. He said yes. So I give him a brand new safety knife. 20 minutes pass, and staff are telling me he's still doing it. I had to dismiss him, it was near Christmas, but tried my best to avoid firing him. Next story. I don't know about how crazy I find it, but we had a cleaner where I worked, employed externally, and we saw them on camera take money from one of those buy overpriced sweets, it's for charity boxes. They got sacked by their employer, and the police came round about it and lamented to us how the cleaner would now have a record. They stole about 3 pounds. Next story. New build large retail building, think Tesco size. One of the contract managers did a poo in one of the toilets on the day of a walk-around with the client management team, and unbeknownst to him, the toilets were not yet set up to flush, so said stinky poo was in there when the client checked out the loos. Shame, as he was actually excellent. Next story. Accessing illegal content involving children on their work laptop. He was found to have harmed himself and went to hospital.
Arrived in the morning to a load of blood. And a note he'd gone to hospital as he hurt himself. He went to some woods instead. They found him in the van's tracker. He got fired months later after conviction. Next story. Our office has a lot of security. You need to scan into the building, scan past security gate, and walk to your floor. This person had been there 1 week, and his missus came to meet him at the end of his shift. He decided to show her the office and scanned her into the building and got her to hop the gate, right in front of security. Next story. Someone pretended to be sick to take time off work. She then badly forged a letter from her doctor that said she was too ill to come into work. The letter was full of spelling mistakes, and the NHS logo was copy and pasted wonky. The boss contacted her doctors, and they confirmed it wasn't real, so she got fired. Next story. My department took on someone who didn't get through probation because they smelled rank, came in on a bike every day, changed out of their Lycra and into that week's work clothes, kept in a locker, allegedly washed at weekend. I'm a nosmic, so I didn't realize until I saw some of the office staff retching. Next story. Took leave for 1 day. Then that evening we saw he'd been sentenced to 3 years in jail for attempting to exploit and trying to meet up with someone what he thought was a minor, but was actually a decoy from Dark Justice. Then we found the video of them confronting him where he fell over trying to run away. Next story. I worked as a waiter in a hotel, long time ago. Christmas party, in January like most hotels. One of the porter guys, he was a dick, got completely drunk and tried the old whip off the tablecloth trick on the table where all the managers were sitting, glasses and plates everywhere. Fired on the spot. Next story. Several companies ago. New chap started on Wednesday, went out with the team and a supplier on Thursday, got mess-faced and made some questionable comments to both team and supplier, called in sick on Friday with a mystery bug, despite us being out with him the night before, sacked on the Monday. Next story. I once worked in a large retail clothing store, and someone, on their first day, wrote, "Help me," in biro across the little cupboard where we kept the little number tags, and hung up the clothes when people were done with them. He said he just got really bored when manager asked why he wrote it. Next story. Highly respected director, very family man, very religious. Busted for having the most serious illegal content involving children born hidden at his home, possession and distribution. 18 months in jail, was actually sacked. Life ruined. Seemed like a top bloke, no hint of anything sketchy. Never can tell. Next story. On my wife's first day at her new job, she unpacked her things from her previous office. The boss asked where she had gotten her stationery from. She told him it was from her previous company. He said it was in fact stolen, and that he couldn't trust her. Immediate dismissal. Next story. We had a teaching assistant who spent 10 minutes parking her car one morning. She then staggered into school drunk, all caught on CCTV. Or the teacher who got sacked for Black Friday shopping on Amazon while teaching a class of students. She was reported by a student. Next story. I was site lead for PCR testing during COVID. We were short-staffed on security one day. While waiting for them to get someone in, had one of the younger lads sit at the back entrance. Caught him doing something very inappropriate while giving the new security guard a tour of the site. Next story. A third-party report of a Facebook post comment between friends in a non-public group not associated to work. Was not even allowed to know who his accuser was on grounds of whistleblowing protection. The company were after him, and they got there in the end. Next story. Had a colleague who worked overnights alone at a hotel. He worked there for several years, and turns out the entire time was hosting personal encounters in unoccupied rooms. Only got caught because he forgot to change the sheets one time. Next story. I used to work for a London council.
One of our directors, who was responsible for enforcement and community safety, was fired for accepting bribes, money, in return for sharing confidential information with another London council. Next story. Worked, briefly, with a software dev who lied about having a relevant degree. He was doing a good job, so the company told him to just resubmit his CV with his actual qualifications, and all will be good. He lied on his revised CV. Next story. Asking not if a particular intended policy was actually illegal, but for the legal justification for it in the likely event the policy was challenged. It was, we didn't have one, and they took the brunt of management ire. Next story. New hire didn't even start his induction by spitting on the floor. We barely started. Didn't even know his name. Boss just said to him, "You gotta get off site." It was a COVID testing site. Next story. She was generally not great, and was likely not going to last much longer, but the final nail in the coffin was she was caught vaping in the toilets while she was meant to be working. Next story. I feel like having grown up and only worked on building sites, I feel like most of these reasons for getting sacked are quite tame and just standard practice in my industry. Next story. Taking the work pool car to go to the casino while supposed to be working a night shift. Also, plugging his laptop into the work network to play WoW on a night shift. Next story. Oh, I have lots worse. One is too disgusting to put here. I mean, it's gross. The other one, a guy I knew used to spit in the fryer to see if it was hot enough. Next story. The company had a dress code for men, but not women. So one chap turned up dressed like a lady, saw him walk back out 15 minutes later. This was in the 1990s. Next story. A couple were intimate in the work showers. Not from my department, not people I know. It was a while back now, but I believe at least one of them was married. Next story. Worked in a Boots when I was a teenager. We had a lad, Christmas temp, stealing sandwiches and chowing down on them in the stockroom. Got rumbled because the idiot left the packaging behind. They set up a hidden camera and found him at it pretty quickly. Lad was Pakistani, and I remember seeing a little Pakistani lady wandering around the staff area. Turned out she'd come into the shop to apologize for him.